Hey everyone, Genome here, coming at you with the next episode in my interview series where I take a look at people who do interesting and/or extraordinary things.
I've been looking forward to this.
Today's guest has what some would call been a meteoric riser in the YouTube comic books community, and I'm talking about none other than Mr. Matt Gonzales of The Boy Who Had Seven Talks Comics. Matt, how you doing this fine day?
Dude, I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to be here. I was a little bit surprised when you picked me, man, and I really appreciate it. So
Oh,
it's going to be cool to hang out with you.
how could I not, man? I mean, you're not only one of the most positive influences in the community, you're also one of the fastest growing channels too. So, I mean, of
Thank
course,
you.
you're going to stand out. So, yep, much deserved. So, as of recently, and I'll have links below to Matt's site in case for some reason you're not already subbed to him. Um, he has now surpassed 1.3K subs, so he is moving on up fast. How many subs did you grab this last year?
Like 700, 800, man. Like 2000, this time 2019, I think I was like at 600. So I may even, I mean, I don't even know.
Oh man,
I'll be honest with you, man. I used to check every single day. Like I would get on and look, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm looking at my subscriber count," and she's like, "Stop doing that, man." And I mean, I was constantly doing it, and then I heard somebody say that it was from a bigger channel. You know, I stopped looking at my count every day and just started loving what I was doing,
hmm
and that really stuck with me. So at one point last year, you know, I started just checking it like once a month, you know, and I just stopped worrying about it. And then I got right around 1,000, and then I was like, all right, it's time to go hard. Let's see if we can get over that hump, you know. And since then, I'll check it every once in a while, man. I mean, I obviously will get on YouTube and I'll see, oh, you're at 1.3. I'm like, sweet, let's keep going, you know.
Yeah, I mean
But
that is definitely a trap you can get into. You can start really just making content for subs rather than making the content you
yep,
want. So definitely a
yep.
danger there. So we'll talk a little more about the channel a bit later on. So first off, Matt, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, where you were born, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, man. So I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. So I'm in the far, far west side of
My
Texas.
mom lived there for
Sometimes.
years. Yeah.
Oh, did you really?
Yep.
No way, man. I had no idea.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Back when she was in
Uh,
Longoria.
that's cool. That's cool, man. Sometimes we'll go into like, you know, San Antonio, Austin, and they're like, oh, I'm from El Paso. Like, that's not part of Texas.
My sister lives in San Antonio, so
Does she really? That's
yeah.
cool, man. But no, I consider myself a Texan. Grew up here and met my wife, the girl who had seven, who a lot of you guys have seen. Met her in high school, so she was my high school sweetheart. Fell in love the instant I saw her. And then we got married like 2 days right after high school. And then from there, we moved up to Utah so I could go up to BYU, Brigham Young University. And we were up there for about 2 years. We started having a lot of kids, and we decided to come back home. And so that way our kids could be around family, you know, because both my in-laws and my family live here. So we moved in, settled here in this home that we're in. I'm literally 5 minutes away from my mom's house, and we're 5 minutes away from her mom's house. And I own a landscaping company, so I do commercial landscape, and that's what pays the bills and gets the comic books, you know. And I love music. I grew up singing, did all kinds of state competing in high school. I play the guitar, used to do the band life, write music and all that kind of jazz. I love sports. I love to watch the Packers, the Green Bay Packers. I love to watch USA soccer. I love to play soccer, basketball, football. I'm actually in a city league basketball. I had a game last night. So, I mean, yeah. And then, of course, we have 7 kiddos. So the boy who had 7, right?
The ultimate male.
And my life, I live my life for my family, for my wife, my children, and for God, man. I'm a big believer in the man upstairs. So, but yeah, I mean, that's the boy who had 7, man.
And I love hearing positive stories like that. And, it's funny, man, we have a lot of stuff in common. I used to have a landscaping business till about last
Nice.
year. I sold it off. It was like a part-time gig for me because I already have a
Uh-huh.
full-time job with the state. So it's something my partner and I did on the weekends. But basically, we got too busy. And I was like, look, I can't do this anymore. And, people, helpers would not show up to work all the time. It was just getting to
Yep.
be too much. And, I'm
I
getting
know how
to
that
be in
is.
my mid-40s now. So it was starting to take a toll on my body, too. I was like, I got to step
Yeah.
back. So, yeah, so I sold that off like last year,
Cool.
but it was interesting. So out in Texas, yeah, it's. So when did you start collecting comics? Let's get down to the comic book stuff here.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, as a little kid, I was always enamored by things like He-Man. I loved He-Man. My mom read us a lot of books, and so I kind of grew up with the geek culture. And 2000, not 2000, that's way later, 1990-ish, my brother-in-law, he came in my room and he brought me a stack of comic books, and which included these two right here, which I pulled out for you. So Silver Surfer 44 and Infinity Gauntlet. And so he brought these into my room, and I mean, it was a big stack, probably 50 to 75 books, man. And I started reading them, falling in love with them. I really loved collecting sports cards. And I started going to this store that was maybe 10 minutes away from my house. It was called J&M Sports Collectibles. And I would pick up, Michael Jordan cards and Green Bay Packer football cards and Darryl Strawberry baseball cards, and Nolan Ryan. I loved sports. I grew up playing sports. I mean, I was in soccer, football, basketball, wrestling, you name it, man. I tried it. So I was all about that. And then I started seeing, all the Marvel cards. And so I started picking up Spider-Man cards and X-Men cards. And so I walked into that comic shop about 1993 and bought my very first comic that I'd gotten for myself. Picked up Ghost Rider book. And I would read the books that my brother-in-law gave me. I would need more, started looking for more, started trying to finish runs. And I didn't know that's what it was called back then. I just needed the next story, the next part of the story. You know what I'm saying? And so I didn't really have any okay, I want to get everything that is Spider-Man, or I want to get everything that's X-Men. I'm a person that's very emotional. And my wife always tells me I wear my heart on my sleeve. And so I see something I like and I fall in love with it, man. So I'd go to the comic shop and start looking. I had no plan of what I was going to go get. I just saw something cool and I grabbed it, But the Infinity Gauntlet was a little bit different. That storyline I fell in love with, and I wanted to read everything I could having to do with that. And so, I mean, I was 8, 9, 10, 11 in those years, went through high school, would dabble, started having the movies come out, loved the animated series like Batman animated series, Spider-Man, X-Men, watched those constantly. I mean, every day after school from probably like 6th grade to my freshman year, I'd come home and right in a row on TV, it was as soon as I got home, it was Spider-Man, then X-Men, then Batman. And so I'd watch those all the time, and then I'd go pick up some books here and there. So, I mean, I dabbled. I didn't have a huge collection, maybe about 200 books by the time I graduated high school and got married, and I took those books with me everywhere we went. But that's how it started. And then I gave it up. Obviously, we got married. I was 18. My wife was 17. We were young. I had to work 4 jobs just to put a roof over our head and to have food in the refrigerator, to pay for diapers for my son who was born later that year. And so I got out of the game completely. I just did not have the time and the money to spend on comic books. So 2007, my brother-in-law that brought me that big stack of books, he ended up getting cancer. About October, he started feeling really sick. December 22nd, he was diagnosed with lots of different cancers. February 1st of 2008, he passed away, So, but before that happened, he'd called me up and said, hey, I got a new gig. I'm going to be doing a landscaping company, and I got this great contract. Come manage it for me. So I was like, yeah, I'll go manage it for you for sure. He was my best friend, man. I mean, I remember watching him when I was a little kid and the way he treated my sister. I was like, this guy is legit. Like, I love him. And we just became best friends, and we geeked over everything. He was way older than me, but he took care of me like I was his little brother. So he brought me into the company with him. He passed away within like 7 months of doing that. And not only did he leave me some amazing comics and a love for what we do here on YouTube, but he left me his business. And so my life completely changed, going from, a guy that clocks in and clocks out and gets a certain amount of money an hour to a business owner. And I mean, I've had that same business and that same contract since 2008. So I mean, he really changed my life, man, and I love him, and real grateful for him. So shout out to Jason. But my situation changed, and then I watched Man of Steel. I think that's like 2013, and I'm like, hey, I got a whole bunch of Death of Superman books upstairs. Let me go read some of this stuff. You know, it's been a while, and I went upstairs, started reading with my kids, and we needed the next book to get the rest of the story. And so that's when 2013 I started going to different comic shops around town with my kids and trying to fill in the runs. Finish the Infinity Gauntlet, finish Man of Steel, get my 90s Ghost Rider run, you know, and we just started doing that, man, and then it just blew up from there.
Yeah, that's a long rabbit hole right there. Once you start trying to fill collections, man.
Yeah, it is, man.
I got a lot of the same start because I got started in sports cards. That was my first love. Nice. I lived in Beckett, and
yes, man, the Beckett.
And I still have a lot of those. Most of those survived the Great Flood that I had. So I have a lot of those. So, in between
That's
basketball, I even collected hockey cards. I didn't care. It was a sports card. I spent my money on it. And then comics came a little bit later. And the same fervor that I had for collecting sports cards translated directly into comic books. And it was funny because the times you're talking about collecting, and you were saying how kind of like I didn't really go in with a plan. I just, there's so many books out there. It was overwhelming. Yeah. You walk into a comic store and there was, 50 must-haves almost every month coming out. It was ridiculous, the amount of comics that were coming out. So, yeah, it was a difficult time. That's for sure, and it's interesting to hear too about how you got your start in your business, man. It's it's always sad when a loved one pass on or friend, but at least they did right by their family and by you, and it gave you a chance to kind of carry on the legacy and to care for your own family. So I think that's a great story there, and kudos to him for doing that.
Thank you, man.
So what would you estimate your size of your collection is at now?
Man.
Just a rough estimate.
I think I'm right either under or over about 5,000 comic books, man. So, and the thing is that kills me is that most of those are books I bought in the last 3 years that are pools. Like they're modern books, you know what I mean? Like I had a lot of old stuff and I sold a lot of it off, and it still kills me sometimes. In my mystery boxes, I sold them off and I lost a lot of good stuff that I had. But I'm happy with it. I've read it. I've read most of everything. I've enjoyed a lot of it. What I don't like, I end up selling or getting rid of or giving away, So, but right around 5,000, man. That's where I'm at right now. So
nice. And people would expect you to have way more than that because it's like 5,000. But that sounds like it's more like you have the books that you want more than just collecting everything. So I mean, that kind of leads into the next question is like. Okay. Now that you're older, you're established, you have money, what's it like collecting now as compared to when you were younger, just trying to scrape nickels together to go buy any random book, Yeah,
I was thinking about, just as you're asking me, like, I'm thinking about myself and picturing myself as a little 10-year-old in this comic shop. And I remember my mom's like, okay, here's $3. You got $3 to spend. And there's so much to get, and that's why I see something and I'm like, okay, this one over that one. You know what I mean? Now, I'll tell you what, I've made way more mistakes having more money. I mean, I've made some stupid decisions buying comic books, and it's all a learning process though. And that's what I love about life. Like if you learn from your mistakes and you try not to repeat them, you become better in so many ways, And so, man, I've bought some books and spent some money because people lied to me about what that book was or what its condition was, or I've purchased books during the height of the hype. One of the books that I made a huge mistake on. I wanted the book, and I'm glad I own it, but in a monetary sense, I made a big mistake. I bought House of Secrets '92. I got a beautiful grade. I think I have it right here. Let me see if I can grab it real fast. Maybe not. Nope, it's not there. I got a 7.5, and I love that cover. I want to own that book. I love Swamp Thing. I love the stories in that book. So I'm happy that I own it, right? But I bought it right at the top of the hype when the show was coming out on DC Universe. Mm-hmm. And now that the show has been canceled and it's over, the book's literally dropped about $1,700 from where I bought it. Whoa. And man, I'm just sitting here thinking about that. It's like, Matt, use your brain. but that has really helped me. That $1,700, $1,800 lesson has really taught me, you know, when there's been other books that the hype comes, I'm like, nope, no thanks. I don't even think about it now. You know, I don't double guess myself. I'm just like, nope, it's the hype. It's not the time to buy it. Once the hype is over, I'll get it in the future. I can always have it later, you know?
True.
So, I mean, having the money now, I've made a lot of mistakes, but learning from those mistakes, I've done a lot of right things too.
And that's what we're all about is learning, especially as collectors. I know
Yep.
looking back, I'm glad I didn't have much money back then because it was
Yep.
the height of comic hype, you know, in the early 90s and all that. It was ridiculous,
Yeah.
man. Everything was $30, $40, you know. It's like you have to buy this one,
Mhm.
you have to buy this one, and it's like, well, if I had the money, I would have just bankrupted myself. So
Yeah.
maybe hindsight's 2020. I'm glad it didn't happen. Sorry, I took a bath on that one, but like you said, lesson
Yeah.
learned, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe that was the cheap lesson actually. Instead of death by a thousand cuts, you learn right there from a big lesson. So
Just one big one. Yeah. And you know, the cool thing is I'm glad I have that book and I can hold on to it for another 20 years. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, it's
And
gonna
I'll
go
make my money back eventually, or the hype will come and I'll flip it. And, you know, it's okay, you know?
if nothing else, it's something
But
good to leave to the kids, you know, whatever, and they can make their money on it
exactly.
eventually.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, I decided early last year, and it's still hard for me, like I said, but I want quality over quantity. And because I only have this little nook right here and then a house full of 7 kids stuff and my wife's stuff, I don't have the room for any more, you know? So there's a lot of things I'm going through and I'm like, okay, I can get rid of this because I'd rather have this. So I've been able to pick up some really great books. And I was able to do that by getting rid of a lot of smaller books.
Mm-hmm.
So if my situation stays the same, that's where I'm at. Right now, I got, like you can see behind me here, I've got the first Black Mask and the first event, first Taskmaster. Those are both 9/8s, and those are books I love to own. But because it's the hype right now, I'm going to go in and get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that way I can put them into a bigger book that I really want. So this year I'm hunting Hulk 1. And I'm after a Hulk 1. There's one on eBay right now. It's, I think, 3.5 white pages. And I have my eye set on it as long as it lasts. And it's still there, you know. But in order to do that, I've got to sell stuff. I just can't pull money out of thin air. You know what I mean? So I'll be getting rid of some books that I love, like these two, and some of the stuff here behind me. But I think as I get rid of stuff and take my collection from 5,000 books maybe down to 2,000,
Mm-hmm.
but I add that quality, I'll be much more happy.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, it just makes sense. You know, and I've heard a lot of collectors doing that in the last couple of years. You know, because once again, the market's getting flooded with number ones and reprints and variant covers, and it's just it's very predatory, and I find it disgusting myself. But whatever. But yeah, they've been focusing more on their own personal grails than they are on just collecting everything. As opposed.
Yeah.
So I guess that leads into the next really difficult question for any collector. And can you possibly tell us your 5 favorite books that are in your collection right now?
Man, that was really hard. I went through my books, and it just depends on what favorite, what type of favorite you're looking for. Like I have my 5 favorite books that mean something to me. I have my 5 favorite books because of the cover. Like this one right next to me. This is one of my all-time favorite covers, probably top 3. And I love it. Every time I look at this book, which is a recent pickup, I'm just like, oh, I'm in love, So, but I pulled out some of my favorites because of how I got them, the story of how I was able to collect them, what the book means, and I thought I'd share that with you if that's cool.
Perfect. Lay it on
Awesome,
us.
man. So, all right. So this first one is the Justice League of America, Brave and Bold, number 28. All right. This is probably the biggest book that I've purchased to date. I am a huge Justice League fan. I love the Justice League. And just looking at this cover, knowing what this book means to the comic book world, I know there's no first appearances in here or anything. It's just the first appearance of the Justice League coming together. But this is a book that I had to have in my collection because it's the Justice League, man. I mean, the more and more I read DC, I grew up a Marvel kid. I have tons of Marvel out of these boxes. It's probably like 30-70 or 60-40, Marvel to DC. But I love this group: Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, the Green Lantern. Hal Jordan's someone I've fallen in love with deeply over the last 2 years. This is a book that I'm just really happy to have. So I'd have to say this is one of my favorite in my collection. Growing up, like I said, I watched the X-Men animated series. X-Men is one of my favorite groups there are out there. So this is a book that I found for a great deal.
Oh man, look at that.
X-Men #1, 4.0 off-white to white pages. This one I got originally in a CBCS case. I got it. I was looking for this book here in America on the eBay site in different comic shops, and I couldn't find it at a price I could afford. So I remember when I was a kid, I was a huge Cure fan. You know the band The Cure?
Oh yeah, Robert Smith and all that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, baby. So I would always collect Cure stuff growing up. Like that probably became my love in high school. What I spent most of my paychecks on from working. I dabble with comic books here and there, and I definitely pick up runs that I liked, but it was all about The Cure during high school. And some of the time I couldn't find particular shirts that they'd have for like this concert or that concert. So I'd get on eBay and I'd change to the UK site, and I'd always find everything. And I remembered that while I was looking for an X-Men 1 2 years ago. And I was like, you know what? I forgot I can change sites. So I got on eBay, went down to the bottom, changed it over to the UK, and I found this book for like $3,000 less than what they were selling for over here in the States. Mm-hmm. So I freaked out. I thought maybe it was too good to be true. But the guy was shutting his comic shop down, and I'm like, I'll take a chance, you know? And it came here, man. And so this is one that I'm really happy to have, man.
Speaking of, interrupt real quick there. I remember you seemed pretty excited that Depeche Mode actually was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yes. So are you a big Depeche Mode guy too?
Oh, huge. So my 3 favorite bands of all time are the Cure #1, Depeche Mode #2, and the Smiths / Morrissey #3. So I love Depeche Mode. If I sing, you know, sometimes people say, oh, this person's voice sounds like this guy or that guy. Mm-hmm. I sound a lot like Martin Gore when I sing, man. So love the guy. I've seen Depeche Mode in concert a few times. I've seen The Cure a whole bunch of times. And my favorite concert ever was a Cure concert because of circumstances, and it's my favorite band. But the best concert I've ever been to is a Depeche Mode concert, man. Those guys were electric. It blew me away, man. In San Antonio, it was cool. It was really cool.
Nice. Yeah, I always like that song "Blue Dress." It's probably my favorite song I do. I love that one. But
yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Let's carry on. So we're on #3 now.
Cool. Yeah. So #3, man. This is a guy that I have fallen in love with, and I love the whole idea of being worthy. And so once the hype kind of died down on this book, I thought it was the right time. I got it for a great price. Journey into Mystery 83. And I love Thor, and I love all things Thor, and I love this idea, like I said, about being worthy and picking up that hammer. And this is a book that I bought. It's, as you can tell, it's in the old CGC case, and there's some stuff that we can do. It hasn't been pressed or cleaned, and this may be a journey I take myself, where I try to crack this, press it, and clean it, and see if I can get a bump in that grade. So this is one that I'm excited to kind of mess with, but I'm not ready yet. I'm still too nervous and still too rookie to try anything like that, man. But eventually I may be able to. And just having the first appearance of Thor and the colors on this one, I don't know if you can see it, but I mean, it pops, man. Mm-hmm. It is just a gorgeous cover, and super happy to own one of my favorite characters. So that's another favorite. This next one is a book that I have been looking for forever, and one of our fellow YouTubers, DS Comics, he actually is the one that turned me on to this book. And I'm very particular in how I collect. I know many people like to call me Matty White Pages or 9.8 guy or whatever. You know, there's certain things I love and I don't love, and you know, when I get those 9.8s, sometimes I'll get a little bit of hate. You know, like, dude, why do you always have to have a 9.8? You know. It's just me. And if someone has the same book and a 9.4, I'm just as happy for them, man, because that's them. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, but this book I'd been looking for about 3 years. I love this character. I could not afford his Golden Age first appearance. Not yet, at least. So this was the next best thing. And DS told me about it. It was the perfect color, the perfect grade, exactly what I was looking for. And so this is Avengers number 4, and this is 7.5 white pages, man. And every time I take this out and look at this book, you can tell how white it is. It's insane. And just holding it, like, this is one of my top 3 favorite books that I own, man. And I have to give a huge shout out to DS, the story and everything. This is another book that has not been pressed or cleaned, but I don't think I will take a chance on changing this one because I love the white pages and I'm happy with it exactly as it is, man. But I mean, I'll kid you not, I'm like giddy like a little kid right now holding this one, man. And the fact that, it's the first Silver Age appearance of Captain America. It's got that beautiful cover there with Thor and Iron Man and everybody else on it. It's one of my favorites. Absolutely one of my favorites, man. So I'm happy to have this one. And, when I was a kid, people, you know how it was, man. Us geeks will talk about, if you could have anyone's superpowers, whose would you have, And I mean, I've had that conversation so many times. And so we'd be like, well, I want to fly. I'm like, well, if you want to fly, you got to be able to have, the power to not get hit in the eye by a bug and die. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. There's always little
So we'd
tertiary
have all
things.
these.
Yep.
Exactly, man. We'd have all these breakdowns, but I'd always say if I could take one person's powers and have them, it would be Wolverine's. And so this is a book I picked up 3 years ago, Hulk 181. It's a hot book right now. And I don't really care that it's a hot book. I'm just happy to own the first appearance or, the first appearance of Wolverine. I love this character. This is an epic battle scene. Everybody knows this cover. But I just love Wolverine a lot. And honestly, man, thinking about it still, I'd take his healing factor and his adamantium and his claws, and I'd roll, man. I'd go take out some terrorists, I'll tell you right now. So, yeah, this is another favorite in the collection, man. And, it was so hard, though, to choose. Like, I'm going through it. I'm like, these are all my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have nearly the collection. It'd be hard for me to pick. And coincidentally, I was always a fan of the Vision's power set. I always thought that would be a cool one to have because you can do so much different stuff with density manipulation. Was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
But, and there's something to be said, too, is like a lot of collectors, you can talk about any collector and they say, yeah, I got Spawn #1. I got Spawn, it's no big deal, or I got X-Men #1 from the 90s. Not everyone you talk to has X-Men #1, the original. Not everyone has the first appearance of Silver Age Captain America. Not everyone has the first appearance of Wolverine. Yeah. So at least you actually got some high-priced bragging rights somewhat in the collectors community, So
yeah, man,
never downgrade that. So this is kind of a comics-related question, but if you could create your own comic book, right? One issue, it's a one-shot thing, it's gonna get released out there. Who would you want to write it, and who would you want to pencil it?
Man, that's tough.
It could be living or dead, doesn't matter. Any artist or writer.
Yeah, man. I kept going, back and forth on this idea in my head because, there's some of the great artists of the past. Like, I'm a huge Jack Kirby fan, man. I really am. But Jack Kirby, what he did, changed everything, and without him we wouldn't have what we have now. But if I have to be honest with myself, my favorite artist, the way that they draw and the way that it brings me in, is actually a guy that's alive and young right now, and his name's George Jimenez. And so, like, I think if I were to make my own story or get to choose, I would choose him, man. I think he is absolutely amazing page to page. He's been on the recent Justice League, and I just think he's awesome, man. So I take him as the penciler, and then I'd have to go. It's probably a tie between Jeff Johns and Donny Cates. Mm-hmm. If I have this idea of Donny Cates doing the Ghost Rider, and I think I would skip. This is so hard, man.
I like hard questions, man.
Okay, if I go Marvel, I'm going Ghost Rider. I'm going Donny Cates writing it, and this is gonna throw everybody off. But I'm gonna go. Let's see. Oh my gosh, I just pulled a blank now. No, Tim Sale. I'm gonna go Tim Sale, man, on the Ghost Rider. I think Tim has this really crazy way of drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would work well with Donny Cates writing and on the Ghost Rider. I don't think he's ever drawn a Ghost Rider. I keep messaging him on Twitter and stuff. I'm like, I want to get a Ghost Rider from you. But I just think it'd be really cool to see Tim Sale and Donny Cates hit that. If I'm going to go, I would go Jeff Johns, George Jimenez, and I'd go Hal Jordan, man. I really would. And Jeff is good at that already. I mean, he's done one of my favorite runs of all time. So that's kind of what I do, man.
Yeah, it's like,
What about you? What would you do?
oh man, that'd be tough. Probably my artist I would pick would, it'd be just on any comic really, but I mean, I'm a big fan of Rick Levins. I did a tribute video for him a while. He passed away in 2010. Also a big fan of Joe Aparo, but he's gone as well. Probably, as far as living artists, I'd probably go with Will Spartacio. I just always loved his style so much for drawing. And probably Mark Grunwald for writing. I've always loved, he does some quirky stuff, man. He will just go out
man.
there. When he's given license to use imagination, he just goes out there. So that's probably
great,
my picks, though.
That's great.
So, kind of in the same vein, for those of you who out there who are watching this and don't collect, would you say that comic book collecting is something that's good for a newbie, for someone who's just getting into? Is this a good hobby, in other words, for someone who's not looking for just dollars and cents?
Yeah, man. I would absolutely recommend this to someone, but I would give them all of the warnings and try to take the knowledge that I've learned in the last 5 to 7 years I've been collecting again, and give it to them with that. You know, like, you can get caught up in the hype. You can get caught up in the variants. You can get caught up in the lies. Yeah, you know, some comic books you'll be able to, if you can find them at the right price at the right time, which is not very likely anymore. Yeah, maybe you could have your kids go to college on them, but 99% of the time it's not going to happen anymore, you know? And so as long as they get into that, aware of where this industry can sweep them away to, I think it's a great industry, because there's so much beauty in the art that creates just one book. I mean, you have the literal art itself. There's so many beautiful pages and covers and things, and you see a book for $1 and you're like, that's the most beautiful piece of art I've ever seen, and you're happy, then great. You know what I'm saying? Open up the pages and read the books and the stories. And then, you know, it's like when I was a kid and I was finding The Cure for the first time. I remember, you know, I'd go pick up an album that I didn't have, and I'd sit in the car and I'd listen to it from beginning to end, driving around, you know, the windows down, the cool breeze in the car. Mm-hmm. Oh man, it was an experience. And it's the same thing. You find a comic book like I did 2018. I had never read the Green Lantern Jeff Johns run. And Thanatos and Fire Guy Ryan and John's Comics with Kids are like, you need to do it. So I started reading it, and oh my goodness, as a 5-year-old adult, I was just like mind blown. And I'm sitting there with goosebumps, laughing, crying, nervous, excited, can't wait for the next one. I mean, that in and of itself is worth getting into this industry. That is the main reason to get into this industry, you know? And then it's fun, man. It's fun to be able to pick up an X-Men 1 for $3,000 less, and then have people offer you $5,000 more than you've paid for it because people think the X-Men are coming to the MCU. You know, like, it's exciting to have that. And if I ever do have to sell it, you know, I can make a little change on it. You know what I'm saying? That part of it is really fun and really exciting. My favorite thing about the comic book world is that it's also brought me to the YouTube community, where I get to do things like I'm doing today, hanging out with you for the first time live on your show or face to face, you know, and meeting all kinds of fellow geeks and people that have the same loves and ideas that I do. You know, like, this has been the best part of YouTube, and the best part of comic books for me in the last 3 years has been to get to know the community, man. So I definitely would recommend it. I would just give people the information that they need to not hurt themselves and hope they do it wisely, man.
I wish I had that, advice when I first got started, but how it is once again with hindsight. But it's a great hobby, boy. You gotta be careful. There's a rabbit hole to be had there because you can never
Yep.
collect everything, and you got to know when to shut it off and when to be reasonable. But a lot of people don't give. A lot of people get into comics with just the idea of speculation and making money on things, and there's so much more to it than that. You can be a very happy collector who doesn't care anything about getting high grades and anything. You just want to read the stories because there's amazing stories in those. Start on poor Roger. I'm sure he'll watch this too. Chime in, but
Love that dude.
he's the best, man. But yeah, I mean, it's just so much for the eyes and in the heart and the soul if you really get in down to it. So I mean, it's not just about dollars and cents, but I would say the same thing. Be very careful and don't always listen to where the wind is blowing. It might just blow right over you if you're not careful. So.
Yep.
So speaking of wind hyping things up, it's another funny thing too, is that you mentioned, all us like-minded people getting together is like, we were so isolated. I don't know how it was for you. Like, if you were a comic book collector back in the 80s, 90s, you were not popular. I mean, I hid it for the most part because, it would be nothing but people would denigrate you like constantly about it. Sports cars is one thing. That was all right to collect, but you sure couldn't collect comics. That was just awful. And now it's very socially acceptable, and that kind of leads me into my next question: is what is your opinion on the impact of like the Marvel, the MCU, the DCU, and all the comic book movies that are coming out and shows? Do you think it's good for the industry or in the collector themselves, or what's your take on it?
So, okay, this is going to be a bad analogy, but I went to school to be a writer. So I don't know if you knew that, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but I've written a couple young adult novels. I've written a whole bunch of kids' books. I haven't had anything published. I haven't tried yet, but I love writing. And when I went to school, I was majoring in creative writing and a religious studies minor, and I had a blast. But I'd get into these classes with these kids that were kind of, stuck up, snobby about how good they were in writing, and they would denigrate Twilight. So it's like the 90s in comics. Like if you liked comic books, you were a dork, Well, in my classes, if you read Twilight, there's no way you could ever be a real author. But the thing I'd always argue is, one, this lady made billions of dollars off of talking about this teenage romance between a vampire, a human, and a werewolf, right? And not only did she do well for herself, but she got so many people into reading more books. So yeah, they may have started off with Twilight. They might end up reading Shakespeare, And so I'm kind of going to use that analogy. I know there's still a lot of people that hate Twilight, and that's okay. It's not your thing. It's not your thing. But I think the MCU is a different medium that does different things than the comics, obviously, but it gets more people into reading. I have seen so many people watch a movie, including myself, Man of Steel, like I told you earlier, and then turning around and saying, I want to know more about this character. I want to learn who that purple dude is and the end credit scene at the end of Avengers. I remember sitting in the theater, man, and when they showed Thanos, I flipped out, dude. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Thanos! And I growing up, I'd call him Thanos. It's just the way I pronounced it as a kid. So I was like, it's Thanos. And people have called me out on that too. But I never heard anyone, say his name correctly until it finally came out in the MCU. But anyway, I remember sitting there like screaming and freaking out. And my kids were like, Dad, that's the guy from Infinity Gauntlet. Because they read it with me, So all these people in the theater turn around, look at me, and they're like, who was that? I literally had like 5 or 6 people come up after the movie and start geeking out with me. And I was telling them who it was. They're like, oh, yeah, I remember that guy, So people watch that, and then, oh man, I want to learn more about Thanos, and so I'm like, go read the Infinity Gauntlet, go read Thanos Quest, go read Thanos and here and there, and so I believe personally that the MCU and the DCEU, they get people excited and hyped about it, and there are a lot of kids and a lot of adults that go and start reading more comic books. And I think that's great for the industry, because if we're not buying comic books, they're not selling comic books. So I think it's great. As the MCU, I personally believe they started out with this idea, and because they chose Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, and some of these characters were cast perfectly, that it it changed, it revolutionized movies. And I think absolutely there are more people reading comic books today than there were 10 years ago before the MCU started. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I really think it's driven people in. And I personally, I think Endgame is the best movie I've ever watched in my entire life. But that's because my brother-in-law walked into my room and gave me this story, and I was waiting since I was a little kid to get that on the big screen, and it was everything I thought it could be, minus the Silver Surfer and Adam Warlock.
Yeah, some interesting
But
changes.
it was still awesome. And like I said earlier, I fall in love with things really easy. People hate the Justice League movies or the DC movies. There's a lot of them that I love. Like the Justice League movie, I'm a huge fan of it, man, and nobody really likes it. But I don't know. I mean, that's what I think about it. I love it. The more, the better. When it gets down in the trenches and you have people fighting over this character or that, you know, I mean, that's just the ugly part of the business. But I'm glad that like Sony was able to come together with Disney and figure out Spider-Man, because
Mm-hmm.
it's so cool to see Spider-Man show up in Civil War. You know, I was just freaking out there as an adult in the theater as that happened, you know. So I like it. I like what's happening. There are some things I don't like, man. I'm not a huge fan of rated R hero movies, and I know I'm probably like in the 10% on that one. I think heroes are supposed to make us better and lift us up and take us somewhere. And I know every character isn't Superman or Captain America,
Mm-hmm.
you know, who are some of my favorite because of their morals and their goodness. But I'm just not a fan of watching Deadpool talk about perverted things and cuss up a storm on the big screen. It's just not me, you know? So do I boycott it and like no one watch Deadpool? No. I just don't spend my money on it, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And those that do, they do. And those that don't, they don't, you know? But for my personal opinion, yeah, I'm not a fan of. I haven't seen Joker. I'll probably never see Joker. It's darkness. It's morbid. It's not something I'm excited to see, and I don't usually watch anyway. But for all my comic book friends that love it, and they're like, Matt, what is wrong with you? I have to see that movie. You know, each their own. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I love it. I'm glad it's out there, and I think more people are reading comic books because of it.
Yeah, I'm real selective with movies. I don't really go to watch movies anymore, but that's just because of my feelings on Hollywood. But I mean, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't spend money on things I don't agree with. So anyway, that's just me. But
Same.
no soapbox
Same,
for
man.
me. But I mean, each their own.
That's the great thing about
It
America, though.
is.
For to be honest, man, like it's all about competition. And if you're not doing something right or morally, I'm not going to go out there and stamp you down and hate you and boycott you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not going to spend my money. And then when you don't have that money coming in, you're going to have to rethink your choices. You know what I'm saying?
And how you treat the Phantom and all that. You know,
That's right,
I've been
man.
in countries where it was a law that you had to have that leader's picture in there in your home at some place and in your place of work. So I can really appreciate the opportunity of having the freedom to choose. So, but
Heck yeah, man.
anywho, so getting back to your channel, so. Do you ever go back and watch some of your first videos and kind of critique them? What's changed in your channel since your inception?
Oh, man. I was watching, I literally was looking at some of my videos maybe a month ago. And I start my video like, hey, guys, this is the boy who had 7. And I still use that. I'm like, what's up, guys? The boy who had 7, you know? But it's so like mechanic and I had no idea what I was doing. And I look at it and I love it, man. I really do. I seriously had somebody the other day cuss me out in one of the comments because I was saying Thanos the wrong way, and that's why it was in my head earlier, you know. And I look back on that, and I'm like, I don't owe you anything. I don't need to say it correctly. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Just growing up as a kid, I thought that's how it was pronounced as I read these books. You know, you're a little 8-year-old kid, you don't know, and it just sticks with you. And then all of a sudden, it comes out in the MCU, and Gamora says it in the trailer, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's Thanos, not Thanos. You know. But I look at things and I realize, like I said at the beginning, I love to grow. I love to learn. I love to do new things. And my biggest thing is when I got started, it was all about that subscriber count. You know, I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. I was all about growing, doing this as a business, getting a ton of subs, making money eventually. I had all that in my head, you know. And at some point, it just clicked after listening to people, making new friends in the community. I just realized, you know what, like for me in my life, being so busy with 7 kids, I'm not going to be able to keep up with putting out 3 or 4 videos a week,
Mm-hmm.
which I started doing and I was growing super fast, you know. I'm not going to be able to keep up with that. I'm not going to be able to do the research and the reading that comes with that because, I go to work, and then after work, even before work, I teach a Bible study in my home Monday through Friday to high school kids, right? So I got to do that early morning. Then I go to work. Then I come home, get my kids, help them do homework, go to sports here and there, prepare for my class, and then squeeze in some comics, man. And it got to the point where it's like I just kind of got to choose. I got to balance it, and I got to put my priorities first, which YouTube is amazing and it's great, but it's not on the top of the list of priorities. So so everything started changing, and I realized, you know what, man, I love the people that I'm meeting. I genuinely love the people in this community, and my whole idea of YouTube changed. Instead of me being subscriber focused and business oriented, it was like, I'm going to do this for fun. I'm going to try to do the best that I can with what I've got, and I'm going to do it so that I can touch lives and be touched by other people's lives.
Hmm.
And once I started doing that, man, like it just was so much easier. It was so just different than when I started. It wasn't so much as a chore, which sometimes it still is, man. It really is. Like we both know that it's hard. It's work to put this stuff together. I bet after we finish this, you're going to go through and edit it and do all kinds of stuff and take time and energy. And sometimes it's a chore. But when my mind changed, it became more of fun and excitement and love instead of that chore, man. And so I look back with fondness on stuff that I've done. Sometimes I think about taking it down, and other times like, no, it's a journey, and it's a
Yep.
journal of who I am as a human being. And I'm cool that I didn't pronounce Thanos right, and I'm cool that I messed up here or there. You know what I'm saying? And oh well, oh well.
I mean, pronounce it how you want to pronounce it. There's I don't know if you play video games at all, but in
Yeah,
Final
a
Fantasy
little bit.
X,
Well, it's been a while.
have you ever played Final Fantasy X before?
No.
Okay.
Well, I don't know. I've played a few. I don't
Mhm.
remember which ones they are.
Well, the lead protagonist's name is technically it's spelled Tidus, right? I've always pronounced it
Titus.
Titus. That's
Okay.
Titus, almost like the Shakespeare stuff right here, right?
Yeah.
But the pronunciation, according to the Japanese developers, is Titus. And so if you get into a conversation with purists and you call it Titus,
Oh
they
no.
will get all
Oh
over
no.
you. I call them Titus just to
On
annoy them
purpose.
because I like the way it sounds better. And I like the historical
Yeah.
references. So if you want to call him
Yeah,
Thanos,
man.
call him Thanos, man. No one's around with the
Right.
ancient Greeks when they were talking about it. So who knows if we're pronouncing it right, even. but
Right.
all that aside, so real quickly, why do you think your channel is basically one of the fastest growing channels on in the comic books community on YouTube?
I thought about this a lot, man. I don't think I have the best content that there is, because I have all kinds of ideas for me to do better content. I just, like I said, don't have the time. There's so much I want to do, and if I had the time to be more business driven, kind of like a Reggie Collects or a Gem Mint Collectibles, I know I can make my channel grow even more. I just don't have the time or the energy to do it. I think, man, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm a genuine person. For those people that get me, those that really know who I am, they know that I'm driven by certain things in my life. And none of the things that I'm driven by are fake and false, man. I'm driven by my love for my wife and my children. I'm driven by my love for God and spreading goodness in the world. I love Captain America and Superman for a reason, because I want to be like them. And I think people kind of feel the fact that I am genuine and that I do love very easily, and I will support you as much as I can, as you support me. And I mean, Comic Gories really changed things, which was a brainchild of a whole bunch of people that I was able to be fortunate enough to have in my life. The 12 Days of Christmas was something that, it was completely and 100% from my heart to others. And it turned out so beautifully to have the experiences that we had on the screen together. Um, so I don't know. I mean, that's my take. I think people like me, and I'm glad they like me, and I hope I can put out better content. But I don't know, man. I mean, someone else would have to give you the answer why they clicked on my channel and subscribed. But I just, that's kind of my feelings and thought on the thing.
There's a saying out there. A lot of people will say like, you didn't buy a car, you bought a salesman, because you liked the guy or you liked what he was saying.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times, considering, I mean, if you get down to it, a lot of our content is the same in the comic books community. I mean,
Yeah.
you can only talk about, Hulk 181 so many times, at different angles, and it all starts to sound the same. A
Yep.
lot of people have it. But I think people will start tuning in just because they like the guy talking about it and they like the attitude
Yeah.
that you have and your outlook on things. So if
Yeah.
I was to hazard a guess, I'd say they like you, and it's more than your content, because like I said, for what we do, there's plenty of content out there. So it's cool that you
Yeah.
stand out enough to really get people to wanting to watch your stuff. So enough about
Thank you,
comics.
man.
We're not talking about comics anymore. We're done with comics.
All right.
There's other things in this
All
world
right.
about comics. So you mentioned you like to play some sports stuff. Is there any other hobbies out there, or activities you like to do outside of the comics and YouTube world?
Yeah, man. So I mentioned earlier, I played a game last night, basketball. I love competing, man. My dad put me in flag football when I was 3, and I did football all the way through high school until my injuries. I was injured too much. I've had 10 concussions. I don't know if you've heard that. I've busted both my knees. I've broken every bone in my fingers twice. I've broken my elbow, my nose, my ribs.
That's gotta hurt.
Like, man, I have.
It's gonna suck to get old.
I was. Yeah, man, I was all about the physical life, so I loved football. I played soccer and I did wrestling in high school. I love to box and fight. I love just anything where you're competing in a team or against somebody else. It's just something I live for. So like my outlet, my wife knows my outlet is it's not only comics and this thing that we do, but if I'm not physically active, I get really cranky, man. And I had ADHD. I was diagnosed with it. I'm sorry, ADD when I was a kid, and sports really helped me focus. So to this day, man, I just love competing and using my body and being physical. So when I blew out my knees in 2009, I blew out my knee really bad. I mean, MCL, ACL, meniscus, like everything. It was just shredded. It took me about a year to get back on the court, and then about 2 years after that to be able to continue, like start moving the way I used to. And that was so tough for me. I gained so much weight. I was cranky, you know. And so now the older I'm getting, I can't use my body the way I used to. So like last night, these 20-year-old guys, like who I'm not that much older. I'm 36, almost 37. Like I should be able to keep up with them, but they're blowing right by me. And I'm like, oh, it's frustrating, you know.
Much anger in him.
But then I think, okay, this is my life, and I've got to learn how to adjust and use my brain rather than my body. So sports, something I absolutely love, man. I love it, love it, love it. I do love to play the guitar and sing. Like I told you, when I was young, I got into singing. I got a couple offers to go and be in certain groups and stuff. Fun fact here that I don't know if I've ever told anybody on YouTube. When I was 16, I went to my girlfriend, who is my wife now, one of her friends' parties. And I started to sing Happy Birthday. You know, I was like, Happy Birthday to you. You know, just like really like boy bands were big back then. And I sat there in front of everybody and sang her this beautiful Happy Birthday. And everyone's clapping and cheering. It was great, right? I used to love to show off with my voice, man. But I sang her this, and then her sister comes up to me. And she's like, oh my gosh, you sing amazing. I'm like, oh, thank you. You know, yeah. I'm used to hearing that. And she's like, no, really. Like, I am actually the photographer that works with NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. And they were big when I was in high school, right? So I'm like, oh, wow, cool. She's like, I listened to them sing. I've heard them sing without, you know, having their voices changed and everything. And you are better than most of them. She's like, can we do something? I'm sure. What do you want to do? She's like, I'm going to take professional pictures of you, and I'm going to pay to have you make a record. And we're going to send it to this guy named Lou Proman, who is the manager of both of these groups. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, are you kidding me? She's like, yeah, let's do it. So right away, the next day, we talked to my parents. We went into a recording studio. I sang a couple songs. She took a whole bunch of pictures to me. And lo and behold, 2 weeks later, the guy calls my parents at my house. And he's like, you know what? I heard your son's voice. One of my employees is really all about him. We have this new band that we're creating. It's a new boy band, and we want your son to be a part of it. We want him to move to Florida, and we want him to take some voice lessons, crisp up his voice, and be a part of this band. And my dad's like, oh, wow, that's awesome. So move to Florida? And he's like, yeah, we need him to come over here. This is where everything's happening. And my dad's like, yeah, that's not going to happen, man. There's no way I'm signing my son over to some billionaire mogul who's going to destroy his life.
He was a wise man.
Boy, was I frustrated. I'm like, Dad, let's go. Let's move there. And my dad is an attorney. And he's like, I don't have a license to practice in Florida. If I did, we'd do it for you, man. But since I don't, there's no way I can make money over there. And there's no way I'm selling your soul away to some business mogul. Sorry, dude, you're not going. So, in the moment, I was kind of angry. But at the same time, when I look back at it now, what a cool experience. It would have been neat and everything. But I am so glad I married my high school sweetheart. I have my 7 kids, and my life has turned out the way it has. That I'm pretty sure I may not have done the best of things as a young kid, making all kinds of money and being away from my family, So I'm happy with it. But yeah, man, so I love to sing, and I had that cool experience in life. And after that, I decided to pick up a guitar, start some bands, and I did the whole band thing. And now I actually play music with my kids, man. My daughter plays the cello and the guitar. My son plays the piano and the violin. My other son does the guitar. My other son does the drums. My other daughter does the guitar. So we've been sitting down and like doing some Cure covers, and we're actually eventually going to throw them on my channel so people can see us like jam out, man.
That's amazing.
So,
I mean,
yeah, it's fun.
Isn't it funny how there can be like this subtle push to try to get you to sell all your beliefs out, or at least to go for the easy fame and fortune, and then realize that you've been pushed into something that's far more rewarding in the end. It's to have a loving family and a progeny, and to be close to those that you love.
Oh, yeah.
You can't put a price on it, but it's so easy to lose sight of that and want to go chase that brass ring, especially when you're younger. So it's amazing how much wisdom that our parents can have too, and we don't even realize it until later on in life. So I think it was a good idea for your dad, because that industry can chew and spit you out so easily, and who knows what could have done. And
it's true.
So
I'll tell you this, man, being a parent myself, the first thought I had when my first child was born, and it's crazy, but when I picked him up and held him and his umbilical cord was still attached to everything, I thought love. Like it was a love, and you understand that. It's a love like you've never felt before. The second thought I had was, oh my gosh, did my parents love me like this? Whew. Thinking about that and then realizing all the hard times I gave them and all the wisdom they really gave to me, man, though I appreciate them 100 times more now than I did as an 18-year-old kid when I first held my son, So they are wise, and I'm grateful for them, and I'm grateful that my life didn't go that direction.
Yeah, if there was one thing in this world I could do, it would be to take the me of today and go back and talk to my dad, and just talk about just everyday things with my adult mindset that I have now, and realize that he was a silent genius, in a way, in the way he take care of us and our family, and always be appreciated. He was gone now, but always be appreciated for what he did. And I never really gave him that appreciation at the time, but a good dad doesn't need that appreciation; he just does, because that's what they do. But
yeah,
amen. Anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and start.
Cool thing about that, though, and I believe it with all my heart. You guys will have that conversation one day. I believe it with all my heart, man.
If there's one thing to look forward to, it would be that, because there's also no one I would rather see. But and he was my stepfather too, which is really a lot of people don't put that much stake into it. But he was my dad. So
awesome.
So kind of in closing here, I know you gotta get going. What advice would you give to someone who's wanting to get into the YouTube game, for someone who not necessarily just into comics, but really anyone who wants to get into YouTube? What initial advice would you give to them?
Do it! Do it!
Yeah, so my first thing would be ask yourself why you're doing it. Ask yourself why you're doing it. And if you're doing it because, hey, I've got a passion that I want to share, and focus on that passion. Don't focus on subscribers and getting big and making money. And I think that goes for anything in art. If you are writing a story because you're like, I'm going to be a millionaire, suckers, I don't know if you're really going to get across every part of your soul. But if you're writing a book and you're like, I can feel this character, I can feel this scene happening. Like when I write, man, it's so much different. So ask yourself why you're doing it, and then concentrate on that reason. Do you have a passion? Did you watch Discovery Bay's pop-up shop today and meet some new people and you realize it's a cool community and you want to meet new people? Then go in it with the mindset of meeting new people. Be genuine and do it for the right reasons, you know? Don't worry about the subscriber count. Don't worry about growing your channel. We can all get caught up on giveaways and this and that. And don't do a giveaway because you want to gain 50 more subscribers. Do a giveaway because you're grateful to the people that have gotten you to 100. You know, there's just it's all about the community, and it's all about the passion, and it's all about being real. And if you can share that through your content, you will have the best growth, and you will have real people that are subscribing to your channel that love you for who you are. And so I think that would be my my words of wisdom there.
And that's great words to live by too. Thine own self be true. It's going to come through. It's going to make video making easier. It's going to make your direction that you take in the channel much easier. You don't have to plan so much about the wants of your subscribers as much as this is what I want to put out, and people obviously like watching it. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and not just tailor my channel around grabbing more subs. So great stuff there. So before we get out here, is there anyone out there you want to shout out, say hello to, or anything you want to plug before we get going?
Man, I just want to say thank you to you. You reached out to me, and you're having me on your show, and that means a lot to me, man. There's a lot of people that I have been coming to know recently for the first time. This is the first time we get to be, on the screen together. And I just have to say thank you for that, man. It means a lot to me that you take this time out of your life to highlight me and the things that I'm doing, man. And so huge shout out to you. Thank you for doing that. I love the community. There are too many people for me to say thank you to. And I just love everyone, and I'm grateful for the friendships that we have on YouTube. I will say, if you haven't watched my channel, if you haven't seen Comic Gories, you need to come by and check it out. It's a show where we have 4 contestants show up, and they have to go through their comic book boxes and find specific books that we draw randomly. So we get a category, and we randomize it, and then these guys have 30 seconds, and gals too, because we have plenty of girls on the show. They got 30 seconds to go find a book, and then the chat chooses which book best fits the comic gory. It is so much stress and so much excitement and so much fun that if you're watching the show and you haven't come by, come check out Comic Gories. You'll have a blast watching it. A lot of people love it, and maybe you can jump on and compete. So that'd be it, man. And just invite people to come check out Comic Gories.
All right. Well, like I said, I'll have links to Matt's channels below. Do you have any other social media presence out there, Instagram, stuff like that you want to get out there?
Yeah, so Boy Who Had 7 talks comic books on Instagram. Boy Who Had 7 sells comic books on Instagram, where I sell a lot of my books. You can find me, The Boy Who Had 7, on Facebook, The Boy Who Had 7 on Twitter, and here on YouTube. Yeah, so come check it out. Drop a line. Say hi.
Awesome. Well, Matt, I really want to send my appreciation to you for being on the show today. And also, please tell your wife and family thank you so much for allowing you the quiet hour or whatever to talk with me. I know it's not easy with a big family. I have my own family here. So, but yeah, once again, thanks so much. And thanks for being such a positive influence in the community and YouTube in general, because there's a lot of negativity out there, and it's easy to want to follow along with that. And I find it refreshing, someone who embraces the kind of wholesome aspects of humanity so much like you do. So thanks again for your great content. Unless you had anything else, I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up. So anything you want to say in closing?
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right, Matt, thanks again for coming on. And thank you everyone out there who is watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more interview content in the near future, and of course more comic content, music content, review content, all that little funny things that I do. Don't forget to also check us out every 2 weeks on the Greater's Note Show. It floats around to different channels. So once again, this is Genome with The Boy Who Had 7, out.